Hi everyone, it's Mr. Barden here. One second, I realized I started recording without turning some lights on. I would like to see. All right. Hi, nice to see you all. This is a recorded video that is going on with the kind of opening units of the class. So, generally speaking, I'm going to try to record and have these videos up and going throughout the year. But I just want to draw your attention to a few things while I talk about the course material for these opening few weeks. The first is that I'll be looking at a few different web pages that you should all have um, easily accessible. So let me just pull over the Google Classroom right here. So this is what it looks like, at least right now as I'm recording this. I'm not planning on there being a lot of big changes between now and when you see it. But there's a few things that you need to know. The first thing is that you're going to be watching the course introduction on your first day. You should do that. And that'll go over a lot of helpful stuff. The second is that there's the class textbook, um, and that is the other thing I'm going to be using. So, again, if you're watching this before you watch the course introduction, watch the course introduction video first and then come back to this one. But there's the course textbook right here. It's all online, it's all free, so bookmark that when you get a chance, as well as I actually don't have it here, so let's just add that real quick. This one right here is going to be material. Uh, this is going to be where we do all of our work and what you'll need to work with in order to turn some things in. So, course resources. There's that one. I'm going to put this at the top so it's easy to see. Okay, so those are the main ones that we will use. I've got some other stuff up here as well, but I mentioned what all that is in the course introduction video. So let's just kind of hop into it. Right now, again, if you haven't watched the course intro stuff, watch that first, and then we'll move along. So the textbook for this course is I've got it right up here. It's pdm.lsupathways.org. Um, and again, there's a link to that in the Google Classroom. That's just going to live there for the whole year, but definitely bookmark it. So this is a textbook, and we're in the process of updating all of it. There were a few delays going on with that, but you should ideally see a few changes take place over the next few weeks to months. Um, but this is the textbook, the main page here. And we're going to be starting and basically going through all of these units over the course of the year. Now, I won't pull this up all the time, but I will every now and then. I was one of the guys who did a lot of the writing and revisions for the most recent version. So I may not always need to look at the textbook to give you the lesson, but all of the course material is coming from this book. So bookmark it, check it out on your own. There's codes you can interact with and see what they do on the side. There's a bunch of stuff that I'm going to talk about, all of that. So definitely check that out. The other one is the P5 code editor. And what you're going to want to do, if you haven't already, is to sign up for an account and do that. See if you can just log in with Google and use your school emails. That'll make life easier if that works. Otherwise, just whatever username you want to do. I don't really care. But once you've done that, you can log in and we can start doing stuff here. So the purpose of this video is to go over everything you need to know for that kind of that first intro week. Uh, so I'm gonna briefly go through kind of these first few pages here in the textbook, and I'm going to also walk you through what is in the sketch right here and the how to turn in the assignments from this website to the Google Classroom. I'm going to mention those few things, and then I'm just going to go through at the very end what you can expect, at least while I'm gone. It'll be a fairly standard format. Um, and then it will when I show up, there'll be a few small tweaks that I'll talk with everyone about. But for the first 2.5-ish weeks of school, this is what you can expect. So those are kind of the four things I plan on mentioning. So let's hop right into it. Um, so, this is again the very beginning of the book, and all of this is hosted on the internet. There are no local files on your computer. That is kind of the core of this. There are other code editors that do this, but we'll be using the P5JS web editor for most of our stuff. Um, so you can basically what we can do is we can create the JavaScript files and see them all rendered on the main canvas here. It's pretty useful, pretty straightforward, but there's a few steps that are kind of involved to make it happen. And basically, whenever you have a web-based project, you have three main files that you're going to be working with. The first one is the HTML file. You may have heard this if you've done anything internet based before. Um, but basically, uh, this code kind of serves as the structure, the scaffolding, or like the mannequin in the store. It's the thing that everything else is built or added onto. So without this, the rest of your sketches wouldn't work. And the the short version of how it's used here in P5 is that it tells the computer where to find all of the necessary information and bits of code. So if I were to open it up, you can see that basically everything inside of the head, that's kind of the main section where we'll work and do stuff here, is it's saying, hey, okay, here's something to do. Go find this source at this link. And it's pulling up all of the code that P5 needs to run. Um, you could add more stuff here by adding things to the body as well, but we really don't have to do that. So um, we don't use this a ton, but that's again kind of the core of it. I like to think of it as the HTML is like the mannequin in the store that's you're going to put a bunch of stuff on. Um, the CSS sheet, I say sheet, this stands for cascading style sheets. But this file is a lot of how things look and behave. And really, for what we do in this class, we won't look at this pretty much at all. But in terms of the more generally speaking with web project, this is used for defining how things look, what colors are for certain things, what elements are where, and how they might interact or animate, and things like that. It's a very useful tool, but we just won't be going into working with it in this class. But this, if the HTML file is like the mannequin, this is like the clothes that the store people put on the mannequin in the store to make them look nice. Or if the other one was the scaffolding, now we have here's the brick and mortar side of the building, that kind of thing. These are the paint on the car, that kind of stuff. This is all different from the JavaScript file. The JavaScript file is the file that tells the computer how to do all the stuff. I like to think that it's the gas in the car. It's the electricity going to this building. It's the magic that makes the mannequin turn into a real boy instead of just being a puppet like Pinocchio. That kind of thing. Um, and those are kind of the main elements that we have here. Again, I go through them in a little bit more detail, but for 98% of this class, and maybe 95, will almost exclusively be working in the JavaScript file. We will very rarely move into the other ones, but they are important to know what they are, so I wanted to mention them. Okay, in terms of data types, for now, that we'll work with, there are kind of three main ones. Okay, um, so basically the short version of it is a number is a number. That's that. It's just a number is a number. We have floating point numbers or integer numbers, and basically a floating point number has the decimal points after it, and the integer number does not. It's just a whole number. Um, and whenever we type, we don't use commas in the code. So just little tidbit there. And then other than that, we've got a string, which is a value represented by text. And basically, whenever you put the quotations in your code, the computer will interpret that as a single entity rather uh, than different things. So like if I said, you know, this bit of code here, which what this will do is this will display text down here in the console, and I said D8 we're gonna get some errors here because these aren't defined. But if I were to take this and put this in the quotation marks to make it a string and run it, it will display this whatever we say here as an entity. And it'll do its thing. So whatever you put in the text gets combined into one string of characters. And that's why it's called a string. So whatever you put in the quotation marks. And then a Boolean is just yes, no, true, false, 1 or 0, that kind of idea. So it only has two states, either on or off. Those are the main bits there. So during this first unit, we'll get familiar with all of these individually, and by the end, you should feel comfortable using all of them. I want to mention a little bit of syntax things to make life a little bit easier. So whenever you have symbols such as braces or parentheses, things like that, they're always in pairs in JavaScript. So you're never going to see an opening curly brace without a closed one in the proper code. Same thing with the parentheses or the quotation marks. They're always paired up. And in fact, if you click next to them in your code editor, you will see a little box highlights around that character that they're paired up. So if you don't have this, you're gonna start running into issues. So you want to make sure that you have it. And by default, with P5, whenever you type the first one, it'll add the second one right there. So that'll be one. There's that one. The square braces, the parentheses. That's most of them right there. So by default, it'll kind of help. P5 will help you out, but just know that you do need these things whenever you type the code. So one thing is here, capitalizing stuff works interestingly in code. So if I typed in, I've got my code here, hello world, it's, saying that in the screen, but basically if I were to change any letter of this, it would not work. As far as the computer is concerned, this lowercase c is its own unique entity. It is very different from a capital C, which is a completely different entity. And if I were to restart this code, we get an error because it'll tell us that it doesn't know what console with a capital C is. It knows what console with a lowercase c is, and it works just fine. But basically what I'm wanting to get at with this is that capitalization and spelling are important. I'll say this several times, but computers are powerful, but they are stupid, meaning they're just extremely literal. It's true or false, yes or no. Lowercase c is not the same as capital C. It doesn't matter if we as the user, still know that says, oh, it's a console log. But as far as the computer is concerned, they're two completely different things, and with how literal it is, it will not work. So again, if I, maybe I misspelled something here, it's not going to work until it knows what it's looking for. So again, spelling things and having appropriate capitalization is very important, and honestly, that is the biggest issue I find whenever a student is like, hey, my code isn't working, and I go look at it when I get a chance. It's usually a spelling issue or a capitalization issue. Other than that, what I want to mention here is that good code has comments in it, and these comments are used in your code in order to tell other users what's going on. Maybe say, hey, I made this code, here's a other stuff like that. Tips, to-do lists, things of that nature. And there's a few ways we can go about doing that. The easiest is to hit the slash button twice. And you notice this is again the one that's right next to your shift key, or your right shift key on the keyboard. Um, and the first one, it lights up green in my color screen, and then it turns gray when I type it too. And whatever you type here, you notice it's all grayed out. The computer, when it runs the code, is going to ignore this. So what you can do is, you can leave stuff in your code. So a lot of times, what you'll see from me is I'll do things like, you know, stuff like that, where I'm saying, hey, this is what the code is. I made it. You can, that's kind of a lame one there, but you could say, okay, this is the canvas size. Little things like that. So that way, you know what you've done. I know what you've done. Things like that. We'll get more familiar with this as we go, but just since we're talking about general JavaScript syntax, you can add this double dash right here to comment anything after that on the line. As a side note, you can also do multi-line comments with is it asterisk? Asterisk? No, it's slash asterisk, and then everything after it will be a comment until you get asterisk slash. So now everything in here is a comment, but this is not. And you can see it's lit up differently. So again, these are just a few different ways you can leave some useful comments in your code. A lot of times you may see I put code instructions in the comments, or I ask you to add certain things. This will become a part of our assignments, but for now, don't worry too much about it. I just wanted to introduce that they exist. Um, I've already talked a bit about the console, but you can use the console log to do a lot of stuff. Check out this little blurb if you want to know more. Okay, the getting started. So this is going to be a lot of useful information, and we've already kind of talked a bit about some of this, but I'm going to kind of combine talking about this with the kind of touring this work interface. And in fact, I'm probably going to focus mostly on the interface tour real quick. So the main bit of this is this window in the middle, and this is the editor window where you do all the code typing. You can, whatever code file you've got selected, it'll display here. You can see its name at the top. If there's a little dot, that means that an edit has happened before you've saved it, so we can save it. Boom, and then that goes away. You can see the preview window over here, so you can see what your code will do in real time. That's handy. To see that happen, you have to hit the run button up here, and you'll see the canvas pops up, and whatever you have happening happens here. You can stop it. You can also have it auto refresh, which is generally pretty useful. And that's where if I turn that on and then I change this, whenever I make a change, it may take a second, but then the code will just automatically update. This is different because now if I change it and put that back to default, nothing happens, right? Nothing's happening at all until I manually hit that refresh button up here. So that's just what that does. All right, so I already showed you the file browser sketch files little window here. We'll get more familiar with that as we go, but that's where they live, and you can access it by hitting this little gray button up here. All right. Up at the top, you can see the name of a sketch and who made it. So you should see your name right here. But you can click on this little pin and actually rename all of the sketches. And this is something that you should do every single time. Whenever you make a new sketch, this is the first thing you should do. The first thing you should do is give your name a sketch. Give your name a sketch. Give your sketch a name. I can't talk. That's because by default, it just picks a random adjective or adverb and a random noun, and it picks a random name. That's great, but we're going to be making a lot of sketches during uh, this year, and you got to be able to manage all of them. I'll show you where you can find all of your sketches, but basically, if you turn in the wrong thing, you're not going to get points until you turn in the right thing. So give them names so you know what they are. This is my intro video sketch. Something so you know what it is. Um, Okay, so that's the main chunk of up here. Way over here on the right, there are some general settings so you can change your color scheme to whatever you want. I don't care what you use. I use the high contrast because it shows up nicely on the screens. I also have the maximum font size up so you can, again, see it in the classroom, but I think by default it's like 20. Um, which I mean it's good, but I'm just used to working in this bigger one now. I recommend turning on your autosave, and this will just automatically save it every 5 minutes or so. Again, here's that auto close brackets and quotes. I recommend leaving that on. Same thing with the word wrap. It'll just make your life a bit easier. And then I just don't touch anything in the accessibilities stuff unless you need to. Um, we'll go from there. But basically, what that line wrap does is you see here on line 11, I kept going, and when I got to the end of this window, it just moved it down one, but it kept line 11 here. I just think it's easier to see because otherwise you're going to have to scroll left and right because it will just be one single line that will be very long and a pain to read. So this helps keep everything condensed. Okay, so we're almost done. Up at the top here now is the last little bit. So on the main window here, this isn't a button or anything, but we have a few options. Under File, there are general file options. If you don't see a lot of stuff here, you need to save your sketch. You may notice that it won't have your name right here. It either won't say anything or it'll still have the default random name, or it'll say probably my name or whoever made the sketch. So if you go to File, Save, it will save your sketch and you'll get all of these options. If you're looking at someone else's sketch, you can go to File, Duplicate. And what this will do is this will copy the sketch to your account. And it'll say, blah, 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 copy. It's the exact same sketch. It is just on your account. Everything on the P5 web page is open source, so people can, if they find it, they can duplicate your stuff. Legally, that's fine. Class-wise, that's a problem if you do that. And if I notice that becoming a thing, there will be consequences. I don't plan on that being a thing, but just know that if you're duplicating other people's work, there's going to be problems. But you can do that, and we'll actually be coming back to that duplicate and share. Those will be useful in a second. This is where you can save stuff. If there's a keyboard shortcut, it's pretty useful. You can download all your sketch files to run offline if you want. And this is where you can open up the sketches to go, it'll have all of your sketches and you can see all of that. You can put all of your sketches into collections, which are useful. I don't have a whole lot. In fact, these 5. But it's basically just a collection of but I didn't want to add it to that one, of a bunch of other sketches, so that way you can go in and, say, okay, these are all the sketches related to conditionals, or all the ones for the project number 3, or whatever. You can just group them up so you can kind of find all of the related stuff, and that'll make your life a bit easier. Let's see. Under Edit, find and replace, pretty helpful, but the tidy code, which on a Windows computer is Control Shift F. On Mac, it's just Command Shift F. But if you do that, it will auto format the code, so it'll do all the spacing. It makes everything line up. It's very, very useful, and I recommend that you do this frequently, especially before you turn something in or ask me for help, because this makes it much, much easier for me to read it and figure out what is going on. So if you have issues, probably the first thing I'm going to say to do is go to Edit, Tidy Code, and that will, tidy up all the stuff and make it easier to read. So get in that habit of going to edit, tidy code, or just Control Shift F every now and then. I don't know why that's the key code for it, but it is what it is. Under sketch, you can. This is I never use the sketch window because we can add stuff into the directly into the file browser, which is what we'll do. And why would I go up here when I can just click on the buttons? But that's where these live, and there are shortcuts. Command Enter, Shift Command Enter, or Control in order to start and stop your code, which is a nice feature. But I mostly just click the buttons. And then under Help, you can find all of the keyboard shortcuts listed right here. That's kind of handy. The About isn't really helpful, but reference is your best friend. So this page has everything that the P5JS code library and editor can do by default. So this is a library of code, meaning these are functions that have already been made, and variables and things like that. Like they don't exist in pure JavaScript. That's the language, that's not the content. So there's all of this stuff that we're going to be learning, but this is P5 specific. I want to stress that now. But if there's ever something you don't know about or aren't sure, so maybe you wanted to, let me find something we actually kind of use. Maybe you wanted to learn how the begin shape function works. Well, here it is. You can see here's a bunch of examples. And so you can see the code rendered here, or different things you can do with it. Well, that's kind of fun. You can do a lot of stuff with this particular one actually. But you'll find, and then there's a text description, and then it'll break down all of the things right there, and it'll give you any of the parameters and stuff like that. So reference is your best friend, and if you don't know a thing, you can search for it here. Canvas. So here's the create canvas function, and it's telling you all about this stuff. So this is your best friend. I recommend bookmarking this, but you can always easily get to it just by doing there we are. Just by doing help reference, and it'll open it up in a new tab for you. So that's very helpful. You can also change your language. They've got a bunch of them here. I'll leave that up to you if you want to. And then sketch stuff. So this is where you can look at all of your sketches, all of your collections of sketches, all of your assets, which we'll talk about later, and then all of your settings, but you can also get to the settings right here. So you can pull up all of your sketches right here. And now, granted, I've used this account for a hot second, so I have a lot of sketches. A lot of sketches. But you can search for them here. You can do them. You can add them into the collection, so you can see what all is in your collections. So this is everything for a training I did, stuff like that. But this is where you can find all of them, and you can open them up directly from here. It's pretty straightforward. This is, again, all the assets. We'll talk about this when we get a little closer. But you can add in external resources to your code and use them. So that's that. Okay. So that is the tour of P5. So let me walk you through a few things. In this bit that I'm going to walk you through, there are some steps here. So part of this I've already talked about, so I'm going to let you read through that if you want to. What is important is checking out this saving your sketches. Basically, just be sure to save your sketches. That's important. Okay, just do that. Okay. So up here, we have the default sketch, or the default JavaScript file. This has two main blocks in it, and a block of code is here what we see in between these braces. So whenever we're making functions and typing the codes, they live in these little blocks. So it's important that when we open the block, we have to close it. All right? And whatever is in between these two parentheses here is going to be inside of function setup or function draw, or whatever you tell it to do. Um, so you just need to make sure that you put the things in the appropriate places. So I've got this right here. This actually isn't displaying the console, but if you were to copy and paste this into the thing, um, we can see that. File, new. I'm putting my name first, intro. This is the second one for the intro video. I'm just going to paste what I copied and run it. So this one, what it has done is this. It is said ready, set, go, and then whatever the frame count is. So this is just illustrating how P5 is working. So up here, whatever we put inside of function setup is going to happen one time at the very beginning. You know, so that's the very first thing that happened is it said in the console ready, set, and then in draw it says go, but then it repeats it every frame. And that's what's going on right here. So this was on for 200 frames before I stopped it. And so this draw function is going to loop over and over and over again. And that's going to be the core of how a lot of this will work in this class. So that'll become probably a little bit more clear as we go. I just want to point that out. You'll notice that each of these functions that we've called has a, it's got the name of the function, but then it's got these parentheses after it, and there's some values being typed in there. These are called the arguments. Okay, these arguments are the values that we type in the parentheses. And they basically just tell the function, which is basically just like a code template for what to do, is how to behave. It's all an algorithm, and you put in different numbers into it. So by changing the different values, you can change how it behaves. So, for example, background here, this number controls how dark the background is. So that one's at 200. Maybe I wanted to make it a little bit brighter or a little darker. Maybe I wanted it a little, really on one side. Maybe I wanted to give it a specific color. There we go. We can start to really customize things. And we'll talk about color as we go along. But just know that this section, it's the function and then the parentheses. These values that we type in the parentheses are called arguments. Okay. That was a lot of information, I know. I've been talking for like 30 minutes. So I want to end this with an assignment. Okay. What this assignment is going to be turning in the default code. And this should already be in the Google Classroom assignment. So I'm using this also as a segue to go to the Google Classroom. So for this video and this assignment, you'll notice it says week 1 assignment. This is the one I'm talking about. But basically, you'll notice that at the beginning of each day, I'll start with the bell ringer in the Google Classroom, and I'll end with the assignment. So anything in between that is what we need to do. So here's all of like the day 1 stuff, and we end with the assignment that's just due by the end of the weekend after the first week of school. But it'll have all the instructions. But this is how you turn in the code. So we're going to pretend that this, actually, no, we'll do it just like that. So, new, I forgot my caps lock was on. There we go. Default code. There we go. So I'm going to do that. I've named it, but I haven't saved it. It doesn't say by M. Barden right here. So, file, you notice there's a lot of less stuff here. Save. It has saved. It did a bunch of stuff. There's a lot more things here. To turn in the code, we want to go to first duplicate. The first thing you will do is duplicate your code before you turn it in. Again, what this does is it takes your code and it makes an exact copy at that point, and then these 2 copies are independent. They can do whatever. They're no longer attached to each other. They're just two copies of the code at that point in time. The reason for this is one, so you get into good practice of making copies of at different points along your work, but also so that way you can turn it in, and if you wanted to make changes, test things, more for the big projects, you can still have your main one that you're working on over here, and you'll just copy it and turn it in whenever you need to, but you're still working on one source file. That's the idea. So start by duplicating your code. You can rename it if you want to get rid of the default copy that pops up. But once you've done this, again, we'll pretend for the bigger assignments this has work done, but for now it can just be the default one. You just go to File, Share. And this will open up a pop-up window here, and we have a few different options. The first says embed, and this is some HTML code. We don't care about this. This is for if you're going to embed your sketch into a web page, kind of like this, or actually more specifically, like, well, never mind. There's some sketches that utilize that feature in the textbook, but this we don't care about embed. Full screen, we also don't care about for turning things in. That just displays only the preview window, not the code. That's kind of useless to me as your teacher. So what I need is the edit link, and this is the link to the basically this same page that you're on. So if I was to take this and go to it, it'll pull up this same sketch right here. So again, that's what that is. So you can go to File, Duplicate, and then File, Share. You can copy this edit link, and you can just click this little icon. Actually, no, that opens it up in a new tab. Never mind. I thought that was the copy button. You can click on the window, and it will copy it to your clipboard. And then when you go into the assignment, what you'll do is when it talks about it, you should see, I think it's over here on the right. Unfortunately, I can't change my view of the Google Classroom to show you this, but over here you'll have the option to add stuff to your submission, and in there you can add a link, or maybe it says URL, but that's where you'll take it and you'll paste that as an attachment on your assignment and then turn in the assignment. All right, so that's what you're going to do. So again, you will duplicate and then share the edit link of your code and attach that URL that you copied here into the add a link option here in the Google Classroom. That shouldn't be too crazy. Everyone should by this point should be familiar with Google Classroom, at least to a degree. If you're having problems with this before I'm here, ask your classmates. But it should be straightforward. It's all, there should be an add button that's fairly prominent right here, and link, and just boop, paste the link right there. Once you see it, then you just mark it as turn in or submit or whatever it says. If you do not mark it as turned in, you will not get credit until I go in and am manually checking. I will just, by default, I just say, okay, cool. These people turned it in, these people did not, and you'll have a 0 until you either say, hey, I turned it in, or I go back and like, oh, they just never turned it in. So turn your stuff in mark it as turned in when you do it, to avoid getting unnecessary zeros in your grade book. Okay, because it just says these people did not submit something, and I say, well, that's too bad for them. So turn your work in. Turn your work in. Then that's it. That's all I can say about that. So that's the end of this video, more or less. I'm gonna kind of outro my way out here. I'm gonna do another one on the coordinates and the canvas, and then another one on the variables. But it's gonna be this same kind of idea. These are gonna be the 3 things to look at the first 3 weeks of class. And again, in the Google Classroom, under the classwork tab, each week will start with a bell ringer assignment and end with the assignment while I'm here. So basically, by the end of the week, you should turn those things in. And if there's anything else that pops up for that day, I will drop it in between those two. So again, we start with that, we end with the assignment. So here is all of the week 1 stuff. that is important. I'm going to end it now, but if you have any questions, uh, you can put a comment on this video and I will see it. You can send me a message on Remind and I will see it. Um, or you can ask Mr. Simmons if it's something I need to help with specifically. Otherwise, ask your classmates. Check out the textbook, the other YouTube resources as well. I've got videos for everything for this class on my YouTube channel, so you can check that out if you're also having questions. I think that's just about it, so I look forward to seeing you all whenever the next time I see you is. Have a great day. I'll see you then.